Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a well-known and respected coach from Chicago, USA, Mr. Jonathan Domsky. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Ash.
Thank you. Jonathan is the founder of Untangled Coaching. He's also the co-founder of Kidorable, which is now a global brand that produces fun, practical, and unique children's accessories. So, Jonathan, we're going to talk about Untangled Coaching, but a few questions before that for you. Tell me about your journey from running a global children's brand to becoming a coach. What prompted this transition?
So Ash, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 24 years old. And if you had asked me 20 years ago, am I passionate about my business? I would have told you yes.
Mhm.
But if you had asked me, does selling fun, practical, unique children's accessories make my heart sing? I'd
Mhm.
say no. I learned how to be an inspiring manager and an entrepreneur and an efficient administrator and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
But the highlight of my week was the 10 or so hours that I would spend in meetings. I love meetings because
Mhm.
good meetings are where problems are solved.
Mhm.
It's where I help people accomplish their goals. It's where they come in confused and frustrated and they leave with inspiration and clarity.
Mhm.
I devoted my entire career. I organized all of my workday around meetings. But after a couple decades, the company was pretty highly optimized. I was working from home a couple hours a day. I'd go into the office once a week for face-to-face meetings.
Mhm.
And I was looking for some other way to express my entrepreneurial energies.
Mhm.
The single day, it was January 31st, 2020, before anyone heard of COVID. And I took a walk that Friday afternoon, like any other, from my home to Lake Michigan to just clear my head, process the week. And as soon as the water came into view, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. It was like I was riding an avalanche. And just in
Mhm.
an instant, I knew I couldn't keep devoting my work energy to something that didn't light me up.
Mhm.
And I'd love to learn. I'm great at teaching. The world needs entrepreneurs with clarity on who they are and where they're going and how to get
Mhm.
there. And I was born to be a coach. So I
Mhm.
took a 2 hour walk, I cleared my head, came back, talked to my partner about me exiting the business and
Mhm.
becoming a full-time coach. And it's the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Amazing, amazing. You've described yourself as a personal growth athlete. What
Yeah.
does that term mean to you, and how has it shaped your life?
So if someone's lucky, they're devoted to something. There's
Mm.
something that they just know that they were born for.
Mm.
I have a nephew who, since he was 12, he's wanted to become world jiu-jitsu champion. And for 20 hours a week, all he does is train. He's like he devotes he learned Portuguese just so he
Mm.
could watch Brazilian jiu-jitsu videos.
Mm.
When you know what you were born for, that's all there is. It's all that matters, beyond any utility, because it's
Mm.
just who you are. It's
Mm.
naturally joyous. It's naturally energizing. And for me, it's personal growth. I believe that life is a curriculum perfectly designed to work out our karma, to look
Mm.
at whatever is going on in life and just ask, who is it that I need to be?
Mm.
What is it that I need to learn? What's the action that I need to take?
Mm.
And anytime I feel any compulsive thought, compulsive feeling, that there's anything that stirs me up, I immediately I notice it and I sit with it or I'll walk with it and I'll just keep wrestling with it until it's resolved. One of my
Mm.
core values is freedom from compulsion,
Mhm.
and it's just who I am. I'm always stretching myself,
Yeah, yeah, well
uh,
said.
physically, spiritually, emotionally,
Mm. Mm.
intellectually, with business, all that stuff. What else is
Amazing,
there?
amazing, absolutely. Let's now talk about the Untangled Method in coaching. What
Yeah,
is the Untangled Method, and how did it evolve from your own life and business experiences?
sure. So when I first became a coach, I wanted to create a vision for like what kind of coach do I want to be? And someone introduced me to a video. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a spiritual teacher named Byron Katie.
Mhm.
But Byron Katie, she takes people on stage who she's never met before, and in like 30 minutes, totally turns around their entire worldview. It's absolutely amazing to see. You could watch her videos online.
Mm.
That inspired me for the kind of coach I wanted to be. Every single morning before I open my eyes, I meditate and I say to myself, among many other things, I declare the possibility that I radiate a palpable wisdom, compassion, and all-embracing acceptance of people just the way they are so they feel
Mm.
safe enough to approach me,
Mm.
engage, and do the work, that I untangle the clutter. obscuring their best, most authentic selves so they see a clear path to a
Mm-hmm.
life and business that feels effortless, meaningful, and joyous.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we do that? Why do smart, hardworking people not have the lives that they're working so smartly and so hard for?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's really 5 reasons, and the Untangled Method systematically goes through these.
Mm-hmm.
The first is, do you know who you are?
Mm-hmm.
Are you living your life, or are you living someone else's idea of what your life should be?
Mm-hmm.
And who you are is a three-legged stool. The easiest, most accessible leg of that stool is how your life should be lived, how your life should be lived.
Mm-hmm.
That's your core values.
Yeah,
I'm not saying how I think your life should be lived, but just based on your DNA and your beliefs and your
correct.
experience, how should your life be lived? When you live your life out of alignment with your core values,
Mm-hmm.
life's a slog. It just feels hard. You're
Mm-hmm.
working against yourself. And at the end of the day, you need to relax with a beer or two or three, or just, flop in front of the TV. When you live your life in alignment with your core values, life feels effortless, even if there's a high degree of intense activity, and there should be. It's called a life of full engagement. The next leg on that stool is why your life should be lived. What's your purpose?
Mm-hmm.
And there's many definitions of purpose, but the one that I like, and I like it because it's just so useful as
Yeah.
a guide to living your life, it's the intersection between how you show up in the world and contribute, because that's who you are. And you do
Mm-hmm.
it at home, you do it with your friends, you do it at work. The
Mm-hmm.
intersection of how you show up and contribute with the impact that you seek, that just makes the world feel it's the way it should be. And again, when you're out of alignment with your why, even if you're doing work that you love, even if you're doing work that you're great at, it just feels empty. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're in alignment with your why, you just feel, yes, that's the way that it's supposed to be. And your
Mm-hmm.
how and your why, they point a finger in the direction of your what. What were
Mm-hmm.
you born for?
Yeah.
What lights you up? Once you know who you are, the next question is, well, where are you going? Do you have a vision
Mm-hmm.
that magnetically pulls you towards it?
Mm-hmm.
There's two kinds of visions.
Mm-hmm.
There's a negative vision, a victim's vision. I just wanted to stop sucking so badly. And
Mm-hmm.
that's fine to get you motivated to start. A classic example, someone who wants to lose weight. They don't like that their clothes are too tight. So they want to look better and feel better in their clothes. So they diet and they exercise and they do all those things that you would expect. And then their clothes aren't so tight anymore. And there's no reason to keep doing those activities. So
Mm-hmm.
that classic yo-yo. In contrast, a positive vision for what you actually want in the future. Same person, they want to lose weight, but they want to
Yeah.
lose weight because they want more energy. So they diet and they exercise and they have more energy, and
Mm-hmm.
it's sustainable. They keep it up. Once you know who you are, where you're going, the next step is how to get there. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just nuts and bolts skills building.
Yeah.
It's an essential part of any coaching program, but it's never the most important part. If
Mm-hmm.
all you need to do is read a book,
Yeah. Yeah.
no
What a
one
great
ever needs a bigger
response.
coach.
What a great response. And
Yeah.
based on all the
There's a
work
couple
that
more.
you do with so many different coachees,
Yeah.
what are some of the common sources of internal tangles
Yeah.
you see business leaders face today?
Sure. So the most common things today are the most common things that we'll have 10 years from now, and it's the most common things that people had 100 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
100 years ago. There's so much change in this world,
Yeah.
and it's easy to think like, oh, what's changing? What's new?
Mm-hmm.
But I think a more interesting question is what's staying the same?
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things that just never change because we're human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's these same things. Are you working against yourself, or are you working with yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And the final two elements of the Untangled method is, first, how do you clear out all the obstacles that are in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the form of resource constraints, not enough time, not enough money. Um, but then if you know exactly who you are, and you know where you're going, and you know how to get there, and you removed all the obstacles in front of you, and still it feels it's one step forward, one step back, which it is for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Then the challenge, the problem, the obstacle, it's not in front of you, it's between your ears,
Mm-hmm.
usually in the form of a self-limited belief or something called a competing commitment.
Right.
And for each of these things, my gift is to take these complex ideas and turn them into simple and understand,
Mm-hmm.
easy to apply processes. Each of these
Right.
things takes an
Yeah.
hour or two.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. My next question is, how does the Untangled method help entrepreneurs navigate operational complexity while
Yeah,
staying true to their vision?
yeah. So I'll tell you a story that kind of sums up all the stuff we've been talking about.
Mm.
A few years ago, I was working with a woman. She was a serial entrepreneur. She was about 50 years old. She had gotten to a certain level of success. She had about 16 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And her business was a prison. She was working 15, 16-hour days. Nothing could happen in her business without her direct micro involvement.
Mm-hmm.
And she hired me as a business coach. And we did all the standard stuff, daily huddles and quarterly strategic planning meetings. She already had a great culture. And she made some progress, but it was always that one step forward, one step back. And after a couple of months, I realized like, oh, like the problem isn't that she just needs to learn a few things and do some things differently. She needs to change herself if she's going to improve her business. So we did this remarkable process called competing commitments.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her consciously, what's she committed to? And she said she's committed to growing her business without her micro involvement.
Mm.
Okay, great.
Okay.
What are all the things that you do, behaviors that sabotage that?
Right.
And she came up with a long list. She hires, she calls them birds with broken wings, like people who she just knows has potential, but there's some issue that they can't do their jobs. She doesn't pay market wage, so they can't, she doesn't attract good people. People bring her work, it's not perfect, so she just does it herself, instead of training them, all this stuff. The next question is someone who does all those things. What else are they committed to?
Yeah.
That makes all those subconsciously self-protective. That makes all those things seem perfectly reasonable. And she realized that she was committed to not depending on anybody. That makes perfect sense. If you're committed to not depending on anybody, of course you're not going to hire anyone you could depend on. Now, next question, someone who's committed to not depending on anybody, what's a belief that they have about the world, about themselves, that fuels that commitment, that makes it a matter of life and death? And she realized that she was committed to not depending on anybody because if she did, they would betray her, let her down, and she'd feel terrible about herself. And when she was 8 years old, that was a perfectly accurate worldview. That's exactly the family that she grew up in. But as a 50-year-old entrepreneur, it was absurd. So what do we do about that? We make tests of the validity of the belief. Low-risk tests that if it blows up in your face, it doesn't matter. Depend on people. Ask your husband to take out the garbage. Ask your assistant to order lunch without telling you what you want, without telling her what you want. And she did these things. And Ash, within 2 months, this woman whose business was a prison.
Wow.
She took a 3-month sabbatical. She biked across Canada. And everything was great when she got back.
How amazing.
And that's the power of getting out of yourself, growing yourself so that you could grow your business.
How amazing. And I'm sure you helped her not just to be able to delegate, but also to be able to build that confidence in herself that she could trust her people.
Yeah. I mean, once you get to a certain level, usually about $1 million in revenue, it's impossible to grow your business without growing your people.
Yeah.
And as entrepreneurs, almost by definition, we are always the bottleneck.
Correct.
If you want to grow your business, you have to grow yourself.
Correct. My next question is that how do you approach setting goals that are both ambitious and aligned with someone's authentic self?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. There's two kinds of goals. There's two kinds of desires. There's desires that are grasping. I want more money, more power, more sex, more respect, like whatever it is. And these goals, they don't make us happy. We spend all this effort. We'll sacrifice all of our happiness, all of our families and everything just so we could get something, we enjoy it for a moment, then we go on to the next goal. It's a terrible way to live your life. In contrast, desire that flows from your purpose. It's naturally energizing. It's naturally meaningful. And the journey is just as joyful as actually achieving the goal. So if we could make goals that are rooted in purpose. Right, your audience may be familiar with the Jim Collins term BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, this big thing that we want to accomplish. A terrible BHAG is I want to grow my business to $100 million. Nobody cares. That's not going to motivate your staff, so that you could have a second retirement home. But if your company purpose, if your personal purpose is rooted, your company goals, your personal goals, if they're rooted in your purpose, if they're rooted in the impact, that's the best expression of who you are as a human being. And your goals can be very ambitious and you're naturally motivated. Even if you could work that 15-hour day, but it could feel effortless.
Amazing, amazing. The other thing that I've often seen with entrepreneurs from a coach's perspective is burnout and lack of fulfillment.
Yeah,
What is your approach to restoring balance?
sure. So there's a few different aspects to that question depending on an individual's situation. Sometimes we feel burned out and overwhelmed because there's just too much.
Hmm.
You know, you may have heard of the concept of flow. Flow is the state of full engagement. It's a couple steps down from being overwhelmed. It's several steps up from being bored. Um, Sometimes we feel overwhelmed just because there's just simply too much and we
Hmm.
need to scale back, not just take a vacation,
Hmm.
but adjust the level of challenge
Hmm.
through further deadlines or or bring it further closer up, maybe giving up some things so
Hmm.
that you're in that optimal level of engagement. But for most people, that's not why people get burnt out. We get burnt out because we're out of alignment with who we are as human beings, and it's
Right.
exhausting to
Yeah.
work against ourselves. So I ask people to get really clear on your core values, really clear on your purpose, and do
Hmm.
something called walk the talk. Can you think of real examples this last week when you fully lived each of your values, when you fully
Hmm.
lived fully
Hmm.
lived your purpose? Were there times when you fell short? What could you learn? What do you want to do differently moving forward?
Hmm.
And over the course of just a month or so of doing
Hmm.
this every week, we can become aligned with who
Hmm.
we are, and we're not working against ourselves. And
Hmm.
the overwhelm and the burnout tends to disappear.
Hmm. Very interesting. You coach at the intersection of business and personal growth.
Yes.
Why is this dual focus so critical?
Well, Ash, we don't have a business life and a personal life. We have a life.
Hmm.
And especially as entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
our identities, they're so central, our work identity, our personal identity, they're fused. They're all together.
Hmm.
And it's the same skills to get along with your spouse and your
Hmm.
children as it is to manage your employees and to manage yourself. These are all the same skill set.
Yeah.
It's just how do you apply them to the different aspects of your life.
Hmm.
Um, and if we're out of balance at home, we're probably going to be out of balance at work. And if
Hmm.
we're out of balance at work, we're probably going to
Yeah.
be out of balance
Yeah.
at home. We just
Yeah.
have one life.
Hmm. Well said. The other one other thing that I've seen with a lot of senior leaders is that there is a guilt or a self-imposed pressure when they're trying to
Yeah,
prioritize their own families or their own so-called work-life balance. How do you
yes.
help your coaches to address this guilt?
Yeah. So we feel guilt and we feel doubt when we violate our
Hmm.
values.
Hmm.
If sometimes when I work with people, they tell me like, what what happens if I do all this work and I don't, and it turns out I don't like myself.
Hmm.
Ash, everybody loves themselves, their true, authentic self, the self that is fully aligned with
Hmm.
their core values, that's fully
Hmm.
aligned with their purpose, doing what they were born to do. Everybody loves that.
Hmm.
And everybody loves themselves when they're doing that. And frankly, the rest of the world likes it too.
Hmm.
Um, it's not just what are your core values, but what is the order? What is the priority of
Hmm.
your core values?
Hmm.
And when I say core values, what are core values? Core values are who you are right now at your best. They're not
Right.
aspirational. They're not who
Yeah.
you think you should maybe be someday. You may or may not be aligned with them, but they're
Hmm.
who you are right
Hmm.
now at your best.
Hmm.
You may think it's a good idea to have a core value of health, but if you always reach for cookies instead of, a salad, if you would never go to the gym, it's just not a core value. It'd be a
Hmm.
good idea.
Yeah.
It would be a nice goal, but
Hmm.
it's not a core value. You may have a core value of family and
Hmm.
relationships. You may
Hmm.
also have a core value of personal achievement.
Hmm.
Which one is a higher core value? And the
Hmm.
easiest way to tell this is just to put them into head-to-head competitions. If you had to choose between going on a business trip
Hmm.
that's going to be better, that's going to help your business, or seeing your child's game or school play, which one do you
Hmm.
choose?
Hmm.
And if you consistently choose one over the other, that's the higher value.
Hmm.
That's what actually makes you alive and happy and make life feel effortless.
Well
Do
said.
that. Be very
Yeah.
clear on your values and the priority, and then
Yeah.
there's no room for filter doubt.
Well said. Well said. Jonathan, I have time for two more questions.
Yeah.
What is your view on the role of ego in entrepreneurship, both as a driver, which means ego as a friend, and as a
Yeah.
barrier, which is ego as an enemy?
Yeah. It goes back to what we were talking earlier about there being two kinds of desire, two kinds of goals.
Yeah.
There's the ones that are grasping, the ones that are for me,
Mm-hmm.
which separate us from the world, and they don't make us happy. And then there's the desire that flows from purpose.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to like what is your actual purpose, there's also
Mm-hmm.
something called the size of your purpose. Your purpose can never just be about you. If
Mm-hmm.
it's the perfection of your business, your beauty, your wisdom, even the perfection of your own spiritual attainment, it's a prison. Ash, you can never live up to it. It
Mm-hmm.
has to be bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But is it just you and your family? Is it just you and your community? Is it you and your industry? Is it you and your nation? Is it you and the entire world? That could expand over the course of your life, depending
Mm-hmm.
on the needs of the world. But if your purpose is inclusive, then ego just naturally gets out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And when it is about ego, not only doesn't it make us happy, but the people around us don't like it. Yeah, no one wants to serve your ego, but they're
Amazing.
delighted to serve your purpose.
Great response. And my last question for you, Jonathan. You've read over 3,000 books.
Yeah,
Can you share a few books that have deeply influenced your worldview or your
yeah.
coaching philosophy?
Oh, there's so many, but there's a few that I would really highly recommend. One is called The Great Work of Your Life
Mm-hmm.
by Stephen Cope. It's a brilliant book. I would read anything by Martha Beck,
Mm-hmm.
BECK. She's a brilliant writer. Gay Hendricks
Mm-hmm.
is another author and coach that's very much influenced me.
Hmm.
Those would be good
Wonderful.
places to start.
Wonderful. But on that note, I just want to say what an amazing conversation this has been. Your own journey from being an entrepreneur to being a coach. I think your coaches would probably be thankful or grateful that they've got such vast entrepreneurship knowledge inside their coach. We covered some very interesting ground today. You gave some very amazing thoughts that you've shared with my viewers and listeners. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
It was a delight, Ash. Thank you for doing what you do in the world.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.